Okay.
Okay, hi, good morning, boys and girls. It's Miss Hines, and I have a special treat for you today. I'm going to be reading a story to you about an American artist. His name is Grant Wood. And when you see one of his particular paintings in the book, you're going to be like, oh, I recognize that. So anyway, this is a little story about Grant Wood, so I'm going to read this to you. Okay, this starts out with, Grant Wood was born on a farm near the small town of Anamosa, Iowa in 1891. By painting simple scenes of the land and people he knew best, he helped create an important all-American style of art. And here's a picture of Grant Wood with one of his paintings. There we go. Okay, next page. Grant Wood's paintings show the love he had for the people and customs of the Midwestern United States. And here's another one of his paintings. It's a real long painting. And it's got a bunch of farm hands taking a break, eating lunch or dinner. And they're working with their wives there, having something to eat. Okay. Grant particularly loved the farmland of Iowa. While growing up, he enjoyed feeling the soft, warm soil between his toes as he walked barefoot through the fields. In his painting, Young Corn, it seems like the round, friendly hills are protecting the farmer and his children while they work in their fields. And here's a picture of that particular painting. Okay. During Grant Wood's time, other artists like John Stuart Curry and Thomas Hart Benton also began painting pictures of activities in the Midwestern regions where they lived. This was one reason their style of art became known as regionalism. Now this painting here, this one is by Grant Wood, this one is by John Stuart Curry, and then this one is by Thomas Hart Benton. And we have one of Thomas Hart Benton's paintings hanging up in the art room. Grant Wood showed an interest in art at a very early age. He often drew pictures with burnt sticks his mother gave him from her stove. Even though Grant drew pictures every chance he got, everyone thought he'd grow up to be a farmer like his father. Grant seemed to enjoy his farm chores and had his own goats, chickens, ducks, and turkeys. And there's a cartoon picture in here of Grant with his family and his pets. Okay. When Grant was 10 years old, a very sad thing happened to him. His father died, and his mother found that it was too difficult to keep the farm running. She decided to move her family to the nearby city of Cedar Rapids, which is also in Iowa. It was a hard move for Grant. He missed his farm pets and felt out of place in the new city school. Some kids even made fun of him. And there's a little cartoon of an interpretation of some kids making fun of Grant's farmer clothes. Because of his good sense of humor and his talent for drawing, things eventually got better for Grant. In high school, he made friends and was always busy working on projects like designing scenery for school plays and drawing pictures for the school paper and yearbook. After he graduated in 1910, Grant did a lot of different things. He took art classes, taught art, made jewelry, learned carpentry, decorated people's houses, and cared for his mother and his sister Nan. He loved gadgets and making things, and he worked slowly and carefully at all of his crafts. He was even able to use his artistic talent when he joined the Army during World War I. His job was to paint camouflage on tanks and cannons. During this time, American art students were often encouraged to study and paint in the style of the great 19th century French Impressionist artists. In 1920, Grant decided to travel to Europe to study like Pierre Bonnard, Alfred Sisley, and Camille Pissarro. It's easy to see the influence these Impressionist artists had on him. This one is a painting by Pissarro, and then this one is one done by Grant Wood. Very similar in style. He tried the Impressionist art, but he didn't like it very much. Grant thought his paintings were getting pretty good, but felt something important was missing from them. He wanted to find a style that better fit his careful way of working. On one trip to Germany, Grant saw the works of some old master painters of the 15th century, which means the 1400s. He became interested in the way artists like Albert Dürer and Hans Memling painted everyday people, clearly and simply, using smooth, carefully blended brush strokes. This was much different from the Impressionists, who created an impression of a scene by putting their paint on more thickly with quick brush strokes. Grant also liked the way the old masters took time to paint the background detail and decorative clothing of their day. And this is an example of an old German painting on here, and there's a lot of background detail on it, like the city in the background, and also a lot of detail in the gentleman's clothing. Okay. It was soon after his trip to Germany that Grant found a way to paint that was all his own. He decided to paint the subjects he knew and loved, using some of the simple ideas of the old European masters. Grant realized that scenes of the people and places he knew while growing up were as beautiful and as important as anything he had seen in Europe. In Woman with Plants, Grant painted his mother as a strong and loving frontier woman. He placed her in a farm landscape and paid special attention to the decorative stitching on her dress, the cameo around her neck, the potted plant that she's holding, and other details that were important to her. People all over Iowa were proud of Grant's portrait of his mother. It was one of the first paintings about the Midwest that seemed like it was done by someone who really knew and understood the people there. Grant kept working on his new style, and soon his most famous picture appeared, American Gothic. Now, this is a neat portrait that he did of his mother, and this is the one that we were just discussing. Now, there's two things in this painting I want you to take a look at, is the cameo, which is that little oval piece right on the bottom of her neck, and also the plant that she's holding, because he's going to use those two in another painting coming up next. One day, while Grant was looking for something interesting to paint, he discovered a farmhouse with an unusual window. The arch-shaped window was based on a style of European architecture from the Middle Ages called Gothic architecture. Grant liked the contrast of a European window on an American farmhouse. After he made sketches of the house, Grant looked for just the right people to go with it. He thought his family dentist and his own sister Nan would be perfect for the farmer and his daughter. And here is American Gothic, which I'm sure you recognize this portrait. And also look at the cameo that she's wearing in there. And way in the background is that same potted plant that his mother was holding in the previous painting. Isn't that neat? Grant entered American Gothic in a big show at the Art Institute of Chicago and won the third place prize. People all over America loved the newspaper pictures they saw of it. Soon Grant's paintings started to become very popular. One reason for this was that many people felt Grant's art was easier to understand than a lot of the modern art being done at the time by artists like Wassily Kandinsky and Joan Miro. Another reason Grant's paintings became so popular was that they came along during a rough time in history known as the Great Depression. The Depression caused many people to lose their jobs and savings. It made people feel better to look at Grant Wood's paintings of beautiful farmlands and proud, hardworking families who helped make America great. And here's a nice picture of a farm that Grant Wood painted. Beautiful rows of corn and trees. Very pretty. Grant also painted pictures of famous American legends. While growing up, he had loved the stories he heard about George Washington and Paul Revere. In Midnight Ride of Paul Revere, Grant showed the story as he imagined it as a child. He painted broccoli-shaped trees and toy-like houses. The roads go off into the background and seem to glow in the dark. Grant gave his painting an almost fairy tale look. Paul Revere's horse even looks more like a wooden rocking horse than a real horse. I think you recognize this art print from inside the art room. We have this one hanging up in the art room. Because there's, right down in the corner here, this is Paul Revere down there. Grant was very clever and an excellent craftsman. He not only painted, but made prints, drawings, sculptures, and book illustrations. Grant also started an art colony and designed one of the largest stained glass windows ever made. Grant Wood died in 1942. It had taken him many years to find a way to paint that was special enough to call his own. After searching the art centers of Europe, Grant had finally realized that the best place to create art was right in his own backyard. To Grant Wood, there really was no place like home. And here's another picture here of one of Grant Wood's paintings. When American Gothic premiered, Grant Wood had painted it. He was just having fun, showing the kind of people he had known all his life. He was surprised when it got so much attention. Everyone seemed to have an opinion about it. Some people thought Grant was making fun of farmers, while others thought he was honoring them. One reason American Gothic has become so popular is that very often people see something in it that reminds them of themselves. Alrighty, boys and girls, thank you so much. I hope you enjoyed the book today, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye. Did you hit the button and stuff?